Amendment Bill.
The interim report is set down for consideration and the bills are set down for second reading. Are there any bills for introduction? No bills for introduction. The House then comes to questions for oral answer, and the first question stands in the name of Jonathan Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Minister of Finance. What is the government doing to ensure that people are paying their fair share of tax?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, the government has made a number of policy changes which have been very effective in improving the fairness of the tax system, and I'll just briefly outline a few of them. We changed the rules so that people can no longer use investment losses, including those from rental properties, to reduce their income and so become entitled to programs like Working for Families or student allowances, which were not intended for the wealthy. We brought in stricter tax rules for foreign multinationals to reduce their ability to minimise tax payments in New Zealand. We've aligned the top personal and trust rates to improve the integrity and coherence of the tax system and to get rid of the incentive provided by the previous government for people to hide their income in trusts. We've also tightened the rules for LAQCs and QCs to ensure that property investors are taxed at the correct rate, and this year's budget includes measures to close loopholes around holiday home ownership and livestock valuation.
Jonathan Young.
Is the government being more vigorous in enforcing the tax rules?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, yes it is. The government has been significantly boosting IRD's capacity to investigate and prosecute tax fraud and tax avoidance. In Budget 2010, IRD was provided $119 million in additional funding over 4 years to increase its audit and compliance activity in areas like property transactions, the hidden economy and debt collection. That was increased by a further $78 million in this year's budget. As my colleague, the Revenue Minister Peter Dunn, said at the time of the budget, when people do not pay their fair share of tax, everyone else suffers because there is less money for health, education and other services. I would note that IRD has been taking and winning a number of court cases relating to tax avoidance, which is sending a strong message the government takes the issue of compliance very seriously.
Yeah, Labor want to put tax up so people
Jonathan Young.
How successful has that extra funding for audit and compliance been?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I'm pleased to say it's been very successful. In the first year of increased audit and compliance, IRD has assessed additional tax of $86.9 million. It's a return of $6.62 for every dollar invested in the hidden economy and in the property sector. And an additional $115 million of tax debt was recovered, which is a return of $9.50 for every dollar invested. It's estimated the extra compliance activities provided for in this year's budget will have a net positive impact on revenue of around $345 million over the 4 years to 15-16. So it's been a very worthwhile investment.
Andrew Little. Oh, Andrew Williams, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr.
Andrew Williams,
Speaker.
my apologies.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and you're not the only speaker that makes that mistake. Supplementary to the Minister of Finance.
Order. Andrew Williams, supplementary question.
Does he agree with the Minister of Revenue's statement of 1 October 2010 that lowering the top tax rate to 33% was, and I quote, a major tool in stopping tax avoidance, unquote? And if so, how does he reconcile this with the IRD's announcement in recent days that only half of wealthy individuals are paying income tax?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, what the IRD actually said was that half of the small group of New Zealand's wealthiest individuals are not paying 33% rate of PAYE. However, they could, for example, be receiving income through a trust, which is often people arrange their affairs through trusts, in which case they'll be paying the trust rate of 33%, which is, of course, the same rate.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Speaker, to the Minister, does he consider it fair that less than half of high wealth individuals are currently paying income tax on the top tax rate?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I think the answer to that question is the same as the answer to the previous question, which is the point that the IRD was making was that roughly half of these high net worth individuals were not paying PAYE. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're not paying a 33% tax rate. For example, they could be receiving income through a trust. And I thought I'd explained that previously, but happy to do it again.
Point of order. Is it a point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe?
Mr. Speaker, the reason that I asked the supplementary was that it went to the question of fairness rather than to the mechanism of the tax payments, and the Minister did not address himself to the issue of fairness.
Order. The member is quite correctly asked, does the Minister think it's fair? He sought the Minister's opinion, and the implication was that the Minister did think that was fair, but if that's not correct, the Minister should correct that. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was just making the point that, because somebody doesn't receive a certain type of income doesn't mean they're not paying the tax rate on a different other type of income. And if the tax rates are the same across the different types of income, that is indeed fair.
Sorry, is this another point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe?
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table the IRD report entitled Helping You Get It Right, Inland Revenue's Compliance Focus 2012-13, which showed that in a survey of high wealth individuals, only 49.5% of them were in fact paying income tax on the top tax rate, surveyed between 2009 and 2011.
Leave us sort of table that document. Is there any objection? It is in the public domain. There is objection, I take it. There is objection. Point of order, the Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a document prepared by the Council of Trade Unions which summarises inland revenue data and draws a similar conclusion that less than 50% of top income earners are in fact paying on the top tax rate, and thereby looking at
order. Leave us sort of table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. I beg your pardon. There is objection. I beg your pardon. There is objection. Supplementary question, Jonathan Young.
Question to the Minister, supplementary to the Minister of Finance. Has he seen any recent reports on how the IRD is enforcing the tax rules?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr. Speaker, yes, on behalf of the Minister of Finance. As a matter of fact, I have. Just this weekend I saw an article in the news media written by Greg Harris, a specialist tax partner in the Hamilton office of Deloitte, commenting on Inland Revenue's latest annual compliance focus document, which sets out its priorities for the next year. Mr. Harris wrote, and I quote, "An overarching theme in this year's document is the importance of self-assessment, in particular taxpayers understanding their obligations and meeting them. IRD provides guidance on the appropriate actions to take when they get it wrong." He goes on to say, for taxpayers who don't comply, Inland Revenue has increasingly sophisticated methods of detection. It will not hesitate to use the full force of the law against those who do not comply.
Question number 2, David Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Prime Minister. Was he correct when he said the gap between the rich and poor has been reducing? And if not, why not?
The Right Honourable